Hello YouTube vinyl community, I'm Jeff Harris and welcome to the Vinyl Record Info channel. And today we're going to talk about original press, first press, reissues, a little bit of hi-fi stuff, and represses. So first I'll define some of these things, right? Because it depending on who you talk to, it means different things to different people, for sure. You know, it's interesting, and not everybody will agree with me, and that's fine. But this is how, in my mind, I kind of work it out, right? You know, original press and first press are often used synonymously, and kind of in my mind, like I'm an original press guy. That's what I'm not a hi-fi guy. You know, I don't like a ton of mo-fi stuff or analog productions. Like I don't go in. I don't have a hi-fi system. I don't go in for that. I'm a first press guy. I really like original press. You know, late '60s, early '70s rock, right? And that's kind of where my wheelhouse is. I think eventually I'll start getting into more, you know, hi-fi stuff once I upgrade my equipment. But I just feel like in this point in my collection, I still have so much like rock, you know, like original press rock stuff to get still, that, you know, I just feel like I'm definitely not at the point where I need to be getting into mo-fi and all that stuff. So going back to the definitions, the kind of way that I think about it is original press is a record that came out in the same year. So you go in the dead wax, you look it up, you know exactly when the record's from. And if it came out in the same year that it was released, to me, that's an original press. A first press is like the first line of records that were pressed with that stamper, right? And a lot of the times, you can't even really tell if it's a first press or original press. You can't tell the difference between the two. Like, there'll be zero difference between, you know, a record that was pressed on the first stamper and then they go to another one, but it's in the same year, and they just go to the next stamper and press it. Like, the dead wax numbers are the same, the labels, nothing has changed at all. So you really can't, most of the time, you can't even tell the difference between a first press, like first off the line press, or an original press. So to me, original press is you know, that's why I don't mind people, in my mind, using the same term for the same thing, or different terms for the same thing, like original press, first press, whatever. If it came out in the same year, I feel like that is good. That's what I collect. That's what I really like. You know, the history of it and everything. It's like a lot of people say reissue and repress synonymously, but you know, that's just kind of the way I think about it in my head. And then a reissue is it may not even be from the same label. It's from a different year. It may not even be the same label anymore. It may be a totally different mastering, totally different mixing, different covers, you know, whatever it is. But that's a reissue in my mind. That's just kind of how I keep it in my head. You know, again, original press to me is if the record came out in 1972 and I have a record from 1972, that's an original press to me, and that's what I collect. That's what I like the most anyway. First press, original press type stuff. That's kind of, you know, my favorite type of thing to. So I got a stack of records here. I'm just going to show you. So I am an original press guy, right? So I like the records. I like to hold it in my hand, you know, from the year that it came out. But there are some incredible reissues out there that I'm super happy to have if they mean something to me, I guess. You know, like, I don't want to just buy a reissue from a company that, you know, doesn't mean anything to me. Like, you know, that's an original press of Maggot Brain on Westbound. But I think they did, like another company, 3 Men with Beards or 4 Men with Beards or whatever, you know. I have no connection to that company. I don't think they sound good. Like, I don't think those presses sound very good. Like, I think the Westbound sounds the best, and I have no skin in the game with that one. So if I get a reissue, one is typically going to be something crazy rare that I won't be able to find, and two, I like reissues that I kind of have a connection with or something that I know and like. So the obvious example is. So, for example, this is a Noble Records exclusive. Well, this is actually on Noble Records label. They signed Underground Fire, but I'm never gonna find an original press of Underground Fire, and I'm a big fan of Dylan from Noble Records, and I mean he's the reason why basically I started this YouTube channel, and I've met him a couple times, and he's a great dude. So I like supporting his label or his exclusives. So I have a bunch of this type of thing in my collection. This is his actual, Noble Records label. And then he also has like exclusives, right? This is Zipper from Permanent Records, and he'll either have his own, color variant is typically how they do it. This is just a black vinyl, but it's just he just put the sticker on there and usually says something about it. But eventually I will have an original press of this one. I probably will never find Underground Fire. That one's just too niche. But Zippers, they're out there, and they're really cool because it was all self-done by the band. And basically when they put these together, they went out and got like different colors of electrical tape, and they taped all of the covers together, right? And so, depending on if you have an original press, it's going to have electrical tape, and it could be some color. They just bought a bunch of rolls of them. So very interesting stuff. Zipper, they're tough to find, but I will get an original eventually. And great. This is a great band. They got some crazy lyrics though, like not for the faint of heart. But yeah, Zipper is great. And some are not only first press, but they were never like publicly released. So I got a couple examples here. I think I've showed them before. But so these are Rush records. This is Russian Roulette. And this is Everything Your Listeners Ever Wanted to Hear by Rush, But You Were Afraid to Play. So these are first presses, but they only ever came out to radio stations. They never came out to the public, right? This Russian Roulette's really cool because depending on where you drop the needle, a different song will play. And this is just a cool one because it's just like the, it's a track listing of songs. And this was also the first record of any of them that had the shortened version of 2112, where it just has the overture and tuples of Syrinx, and because that was all they could play on the radio, basically, because 2112 is like 21 minutes long. So, but this is the press that the radio stations used to play that shortened version. So I think that's pretty cool. So these are technically first presses, but they're also they didn't come out to the public either. They're only promo presses. This is another example, Power of Zeus, right? Noble Record exclusive, but this is like an exclusive yellow wax, right? That only came out for Noble Records. Yeah, great stuff. And this one's also interesting when it comes to like the first press or reissue, topic. Is this was recorded in 1970, but never came out, never pressed to vinyl, right? It came out in 2024. So, technically this is a first press of Uncertain Destination by Power of Zeus. They had another one, Gospel According to Zeus, which came out in 70 also, I think. But that was that's an original press. You can get it from 1970 or 71, whenever it came out. But this one was never pressed to vinyl. So, it's kind of an interesting topic too to think about. Like, this is kind of a first press, but it was recorded back in 1970, but just came out in 2024. So it's kind of cool one. Okay, so for a lot of first presses too, a lot of them you could tell right off the bat just by looking at their labels. So for example, this is Miles Davis Kind of Blue, and this is a 6i Columbia, right? So these are the eyes when people say 6i Columbia. So these also came out in 2eyes. So it'll be like these two right here, but the other ones will be gone. So a 2-eye Columbia. That kind of gives you, some indication right off the bat what kind of press this is. So I think it was like, I'm getting this wrong, but it was like anything like from like 1967 or earlier is going to be a 6-eye if it's an original press. And then they went to the 2-eye, and then they went to the Columbia, where it's just like a bunch of Columbias all the way around. So you like right off the bat, for some labels, you can kind of tell, what press it is right off the rip. Another one is Metallica, right? Ride the Lightning. These guys eventually are, reissues. This will be on Elektra, but you can tell right off the bat if it's a first press or not, because it's going to be on the silver Megaforce label there. And then, subsequent pressings of this went on Elektra. That's how a lot of the, earlier Metallica records were on the Megaforce before they went over to strictly Elektra. Here's another one I was talking about. This is MC5, Kick Out the Jams. So, I got this very, very early in my record collecting days, right? Like very, 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 very early. So I was in my mind, there was no way I was going to get an original press of this. So I got this, Sunday's one. I just got it at my local record store and got this reissue. I have, no connection to the reissue label at all or anything. It's just, back, when you're first collecting records, and you like something, just get your hands on it. It doesn't have to be a first press or original press. Now that I'm later on in my collection, I've been collecting for a long time. That's all that I'm really looking for is first press stuff. But back in my early days of collecting, I didn't care. Like, as long as I can get a hold of the music, that's all that really mattered to me, right? So, is what it is. But it's something I look back on and whatever. And then so some records you can have a first press, but they came out on a different label, and that's really truly the first press, right? So this is Sounds of the South, Leonard Skinner, pronounced Leonard Skinner. They eventually went on to MCA Records, kind of a subsidiary, but they bought this label, MCA Records. But it goes. I think the next presses are on that. I think the Rainbow MCA label after this. So you could get a press of that, but like the true first pressings, right, were on Sounds of the South before they were just strictly MCA. So it's kind of interesting. Some are tricky. This one has burned me in the past, right? So this is King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson King, an observation by King Crimson. So for a lot of Atlantic records, right, everything looks the same on Atlantic records, except for at the bottom, there's an address that's either typically Broadway or Rockefeller. And depending on when your record came out, that address makes a big difference on whether or not it's going to be a reissue or a first press. So I've been burned this a couple times where I picked up this record like, oh, sweet, I think this is a first press. And, after looking at it more, I see that it's a Rockefeller, which the Rockefeller address is like a later address. This Broadway address was like their first address. So definitely look into that. Make sure you're taking a peek at that, because some first presses are going to be the Rockefeller address, but depending on when the record came out, you got to look for the Broadway. I've been burned on that a lot. So this is Howlin' Wolf, Moan in the Moonlight. So a lot of people will argue that like the difference between you can't have a first press unless you have a first press from the country that they're from. I don't agree with that, right? I think there are first press U.S. Of Rolling Stones records, and I think there are first press UK Rolling Stones records. Like, that doesn't really bother me as much. So, this is a Japanese press, right? This is not an original U.S. Original U.S. presses are, I don't know, $500 to $800 probably, maybe even more nowadays. I haven't really looked at it in a while. But this is like the first year that it came out in Japan. So this is like, I can't remember when this came out originally. But this is as close as I'm going to get to a first U.S. press, because I'm just never going to find one probably, and so this is just the first year that it came out in Japan. So it's just something that's going to be close enough for me for the meantime, I guess. Now, unofficial presses. Now, like I said, I'm an original press guy, right? So I don't have any unofficial presses in my collection. And when I do get them, I sell them typically. And I'm not a big fan. Like I know a lot of people love unofficial presses because you can really get in the rabbit hole of unofficial presses, because a lot of them came out with different variants. So like Trademark Quality is a huge unofficial press type label. And they'll have the same record, but like in different color variants or different covers sometimes. Like you can dive down the rabbit hole of unofficial presses, which, I get the appeal of that. I just don't collect them. So I don't have any unofficial presses. This is just Frigid Pink. This is a Taiwanese press, which is basically an unofficial press. They used to just take, U.S. copies, whatever copy they get, photocopy it. This is just like a piece of paper, basically. They'll put that stamp on there and press the copy. This is, in all intents and purposes, this is basically an unofficial copy, right? But it's from Taiwan, so kind of interesting. But like I said, I'm not a big fan of unofficial presses. So this is just another example. Like, I'm never going to find a Fraction Moonblood, right? They're $10,000 for original presses. This is just, this is a Noble Records exclusive on the red wax, so I like supporting the record, and, I like supporting Noble Records. So I'm completely happy with this. I'm not going to pony up $10,000 for original. So I am pumped to have at least any copy of it, especially a copy that, from a label or from Noble Records that, I like. So this is an original press of Elton John, Captain Fantastic, and Brown Dirt Cowboy. So sometimes you can tell the press, and I love when it's like this because it's so easy to identify, but like, you will be able to tell like right off the rip whether or not it's first press or not, because first presses of this one have like the colorful graphic there, like it is on the cover. It's on there. Later pressings, reissues, will just have the regular MCA label on there. I think it's the rainbow label for all the reissues. But so like sometimes I like when labels do that, where it's like, this is the first press, and then all subsequent presses, they have something very obvious, right, that changes it from an original press to a reissue. It's not like that all the time. I would say strong majority of the time, you always have to go to the dead wax to like figure out what press you have. But that's what record collecting is really cool too. Is like, there are so many little, niches and like little details about all kinds of different records, where it's like, oh, if you don't have this little thing, if it doesn't say this little thing, it's not a first press. You're looking for this little variation of differences. The rabbit hole of that is incredible. And just learning all that little stuff, takes a lot of research, which is fun. You gotta be careful of promo records, because typically you pick up a promo record, you're like, sweet, this is gonna be the earliest of the first presses, earliest right off the pressing plant floor, and sometimes they're not, right? Sometimes they reissued records, like very popular records like this one, and then they sent more promo copies out to radio stations, right? Maybe they changed something, maybe they changed the mix a little bit, whatever, change the mastering, whatever it is, but they'll send these promo records back out. So like this, for example, this is Desperado. It's a promo copy, but this is actually a reissue on Asylum. So, they maybe changed something and they sent promo copies back out to the radio station. So, even with promo copies, where, 99% of the time you're going to be safe in knowing if you pick up a promo copy, it's going to be the very earliest first press. Not always the case, and this is a good example of that. So you still have to look up the dead wax even on that sometimes. Here's another example. This is a promo copy from Noble Records, and this one's on his label. This is Dry Water. So there are original presses of Dry Water out there, Southpaw, and you know those exist. But this is a promo copy of his reissue on his label. That he pressed with quality records. Again, this is another record that I'm never going to have an original press of. Dry Water is like, I'm just never going to find an original press at a price that I want to pay for it. So getting a promo copy of his reissue of this is like, I'm completely happy with that. I think it's awesome. I think it's really, really cool. So, that type of thing. Sometimes you can tell right on the cover whether or not it's an original press or not. So, like for an example, like this is Doors LA Woman. If you don't, you know that if they're sharp edges, like 90-degree edges, and not these rounded ones, it's going to be a reissue. You also know that if it's not like the real film here, like the window screen here, you know that's a reissue. Like later reissues is just like a flat cover, like normal. That right off the bat, you can tell what kind of press this is just by looking at the cover before you even pick it up. So that's kind of interesting too. I've showed this before, but this is David Bowie, Diamond Dogs. This is still an original press, but the very, very, very first ones right off the pressing plant are going to have the non-shadow dog, right? They're impossible to find. But, those would be the very, very, very first ones, because when they realized that was going to be an issue, they took them all back and kept pressing this with the shadowed version. Still a first press, but, those very early ones are going to have something a little different. There's no difference in the mastering or anything, or in the mixing, but it's just that cover that, it's similar to, the Beatles Butcher covers, right? You can still have a first press of Yesterday and Today, but you can also have a Butcher cover, So it's like, another one, this is Creed's Clearwater Revival. This is their debut album, and later pressings came like right here with like a big red sticker thing that says Susie Q on it. So you know that right off the bat, that's not going to be a first press. The first presses don't have that thing on there. So just another example of something where you can, before you even pick it up, you can tell what press it is. This is Black Sabbath. This is technically a repress of Paranoid on the Vertigo label, right? So it came out in the same year, as Paranoid, regularly, but you can tell with the Vertigo because I think first presses had the Vertigo above the spindle hole right here, and this one has it below, so you know that this is a repress, right? So, another, little label detail that, good to know while you're out there digging if you do come across if you're lucky enough to come across a Vertigo label record. And then, one last one I was going to show you. This is just another example, Andromeda. I like to think eventually I will get an original press of this. They're just creeping up in price every day. It seems like they're getting more and more expensive whenever you do find them. I'd be very happy with the original press of this, but I'm also pumped to have the Noble Record exclusive because, if I ever do get one, it's probably not likely going to be anytime soon. They're very, very expensive. This used to be probably like a $400 record, and I feel like they're close to $1,000 now, in any decent shape anyway. So, awesome record, Noble Record exclusive on that yellow wax. I'm pumped to have it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any copy at all. And like I said, I'm not a hi-fi guy. I have this one. This is the only, I would say, like, high fidelity record I have, but this is the Ultra Just One Step by Mobile Fidelity. Muddy Waters folk singer. It's great stuff. It's it sounds great, but again, I don't have a hi-fi system. I'm not into hi-fi stuff. I really like first press, original press stuff. So I like to hold the history in my hands. There's a collectible thing in my brain that I'm like, that's more interesting to me than a MoFi box set or something like that. I just like original press stuff. So So that's gonna do it for this one. I appreciate you guys' patience with the video. We got busy here, so hoping to put them out a little more regularly. If you have not already, please just subscribe to the channel. Trying to grow it. It's growing a little bit every day. We're getting there. And, you know, if you don't feel like subscribing, at least hit that thumbs up button so it'll help me get in the YouTube algorithm. But, you know what, just subscribe. You know, it's a lot easier to do it. Appreciate you guys, and catch you in the next one.